In the world of electric vehicles, few names have risen as rapidly as BYD. Once relatively unknown outside of China, this automaker has become a global force that even Tesla can't ignore. But here's where the story gets interesting. In 2024, the European Union made a decisive move, slapping tariffs of up to 30% on Chinese electric vehicles, with BYD squarely in the crosshairs. The message seemed clear. Europe was closing its doors to Chinese automakers. Industry analysts predicted doom for BYD's European ambitions. The consensus was simple: Chinese electric vehicles would be priced out of one of the world's most lucrative markets. But then something unexpected happened. Something that defied conventional wisdom and shocked the automotive industry. SIXT, Europe's largest car rental and mobility company, announced they were placing an order for 100,000 BYD vehicles. Not 10,000, not 50,000, 100,000 cars. And they weren't apologetic about it either. When journalists pressed SIXT executives about why they'd choose a Chinese manufacturer facing such punitive tariffs, the response was stunning in its simplicity. Even with the 30% tariff, BYD remains our best option. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the global automotive industry. A story about disruption, economics, and how the electric vehicle revolution is reshaping century-old assumptions about who makes the best cars. If you want to stay informed about the major shifts happening in global business and technology, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Let's begin. To understand why this story matters, we need to rewind to early 2024. The European Union, responding to pressure from domestic automakers, launched a comprehensive anti-dumping investigation into China's electric vehicle sector. The accusation: that Chinese manufacturers were engaged in unfair trade practices, flooding European markets with artificially cheap electric vehicles that threatened to destroy local competition. The EU's argument centered on subsidies. According to European regulators, Chinese electric vehicle companies benefited from massive government support. Cheap land, favorable loans, direct cash injections, and regulatory advantages that allowed them to undercut European manufacturers on price without actually being more efficient. The investigation concluded with decisive action. The EU imposed what they called anti-subsidy duties, essentially tariffs designed to level the playing field. But these weren't modest adjustments. They were substantial barriers to entry. Here's how the tariff structure broke down. BYD faced a 17% duty. Geely, another major Chinese automaker, was hit with 18.8%. SAC Group, one of China's largest state-owned manufacturers, received the harshest treatment at 35.3%. Other Chinese companies that cooperated with the investigation faced 20% tariffs, while those that didn't cooperate were automatically assigned the maximum rate of 35.3%. But here's the crucial detail that many people missed. These weren't the only tariffs in play. The European Union already imposed a standard 10% import duty on all vehicles entering the market, regardless of origin. When you add that baseline tariff to the new anti-subsidy duties, the math becomes stark. Chinese electric vehicles entering Europe could face combined tariffs as high as 45.3%. That's nearly half the vehicle's value added in taxes before a single customer even sees it in a showroom. The immediate response from Chinese manufacturers was predictable: retreat. Two of China's largest battery producers announced they were suspending plans to build manufacturing facilities in Europe. Several automakers canceled investment projects in Italy, France, and Germany. The calculations were simple. If you can't sell cars profitably in Europe, why invest billions building factories there? Instead, Chinese companies pivoted towards Southeast Asia. BYD led the charge, announcing plans throughout 2024 to establish production facilities in Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Other manufacturers quickly followed, unveiling their own Southeast Asian expansion strategies. To outside observers, the conclusion seemed obvious. Chinese electric vehicle makers had been effectively locked out of Europe. They were moving on to friendlier markets where they could compete without facing discriminatory tariffs. And then SIXT dropped their bombshell announcement. Late in 2024, SIXT made an announcement that sent ripples through the automotive industry. They revealed a partnership with BYD that was breathtaking in its scope, a commitment to purchase at least 100,000 electric vehicles over the next 6 years. This wasn't a tentative experiment or a small pilot program. This was a massive, long-term commitment to a Chinese manufacturer at precisely the moment when European policymakers were trying to discourage such partnerships. The initial rollout would focus on Europe and Latin America, with subsequent expansion into the Middle East, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The vehicles would include BYD's Yuan Plus model, which had already gained traction in European markets despite the challenging regulatory environment. But the partnership went deeper than just vehicle purchases. SIXT and BYD announced they would jointly develop autonomous driving technology, with plans to deploy self-driving vehicles on SIXT's mobility platform. This was a strategic bet on the future, not just a transactional vehicle purchase. SIXT also revealed an ambitious environmental goal, increasing the proportion of electric vehicles in their fleet to between 70 and 90% by 2030. To achieve that target, they needed a partner who could deliver high-quality electric vehicles at scale and at competitive prices. So who exactly is SIXT, and why does their decision matter so much? SIXT is a global mobility giant, operating in over 100 countries worldwide. They maintain more than 2,100 business locations, making them one of the most geographically distributed car rental companies on the planet. Their fleet currently consists of at least 180,000 vehicles, ranging from compact economy cars to luxury models. Their customer base is diverse: corporations, individual travelers, and business professionals. But they've positioned themselves in the premium segment of the market. When you rent from SIXT, you're typically paying for a higher level of service and vehicle quality than you'd get from budget competitors. As Europe's largest on-demand mobility and delivery platform, SIXT wields enormous influence. Their vehicle choices send signals to the broader market about which manufacturers are winning and which are losing the electric vehicle race. SIXT's interest in autonomous vehicles isn't new. In fact, their history with self-driving technology is one of the most dramatic in the industry, a story of soaring ambition, crushing failure, and persistent determination. Back in 2015, SIXT made a bold decision to invest heavily in autonomous driving technology. They recruited approximately 40 research and development specialists, bringing in scientists from the prestigious National Robotics Engineering Center in the United States. They later acquired an autonomous trucking company to accelerate their technical capabilities. For a while, it seemed like SIXT was positioning itself to become a leader in the autonomous mobility revolution. They had the fleet size, the customer relationships, and increasingly, the technical expertise to make it happen. Then came 2018 and disaster. One of SIXT's autonomous vehicles was involved in what would become known as the world's first fatal accident involving a self-driving car. The incident sent shockwaves through the industry and fundamentally changed the conversation about autonomous vehicle safety. For SIXT, the consequences were immediate and severe. Their stock price plummeted. Public trust evaporated. Regulators scrutinized their operations. The company that had positioned itself at the forefront of autonomous driving suddenly found itself at the center of a crisis that threatened its reputation and business model. They had no choice but to suspend their autonomous driving research and development programs indefinitely. But here's what's interesting: they never completely abandoned the vision. Despite the setback, SIXT continued to believe that autonomous vehicles would eventually transform urban mobility. They just needed to wait for the right moment and the right technology partner. Fast forward to 2024, and that moment appears to have arrived. The autonomous driving landscape has transformed dramatically since 2018. Companies like Waymo have logged millions of autonomous miles in complex urban environments. Cruise, despite its own setbacks, has demonstrated that self-driving technology can operate at commercial scale. And Tesla has announced plans to launch its own autonomous taxi fleet, validating the business model that SIXT had envisioned years earlier. For SIXT, which controls substantial market share in the ride-hailing sector, the stakes couldn't be higher. Autonomous vehicles represent an existential opportunity, a chance to dramatically reduce operating costs while expanding service availability. Miss this wave of innovation, and you risk becoming irrelevant as competitors with autonomous fleets undercut your prices and outcompete your service. That's why BYD became such an attractive partner. They weren't just offering affordable electric vehicles, they were offering a pathway back into the autonomous driving future that SIXT had been forced to abandon. The day BYD and SIXT signed their partnership agreement, something revealing happened. Tesla issued a statement that was unusually pointed, even aggressive by corporate standards. The essence of their message was pretty clear. BYD needs to change its technical approach immediately, or face some serious consequences. It was honestly a rare moment of public anxiety from a company known for its confidence, sometimes even arrogance. And it revealed something important. Tesla views BYD not as a minor irritant from an emerging market, but as a genuine threat to its global dominance in electric vehicles. The statement also prompted journalists to ask the obvious question to SIXT executives. Given the EU's tariffs, weren't they worried about significantly increased procurement costs? SIXT's response was unequivocal. Even accounting for the 30% tariff burden, BYD remained their optimal choice. This wasn't just corporate spin, it was backed by hard economics. Let's look at the numbers. Before the new European tariffs took effect, a BYD electric vehicle model was priced around $12,000. After the tariffs were applied, that price rose to approximately $23,000, nearly doubling the cost. That sounds devastating, right? How could BYD possibly remain competitive when tariffs almost double their price? Here's the answer. Tesla is even more expensive. A baseline Tesla Model 3 typically starts above $30,000 in European markets. Even with tariffs nearly doubling BYD's price, there's still a substantial gap, often $7,000 or more, between comparable BYD and Tesla models. For a company like SIXT that's purchasing vehicles by the tens of thousands, those savings compound dramatically. Buying 100,000 vehicles at a $7,000 discount per unit means saving $700 million over the life of the contract. Those are numbers that no CFO can ignore, regardless of political pressure to buy European or support Western manufacturers. A few years ago, the global electric vehicle market could be summarized with a simple framework. There was Tesla, and then there was everyone else. Tesla wasn't just the leader. They were in a category of their own. They had the technology, the brand cash, the charging infrastructure, the manufacturing scale, and most importantly, the vision. Every other automaker was playing catch-up, trying to figure out how to compete with a company that seemed to be several years ahead in every dimension that mattered. Today, that landscape has fundamentally transformed. The competition now has three tiers: Tesla, BYD, and everyone else. BYD has emerged not just as another electric vehicle manufacturer, but as a company that can compete directly with Tesla on technology, manufacturing efficiency, and increasingly, brand perception. They've achieved something that legacy automakers like Volkswagen, GM, and Ford have struggled to accomplish: credibility as an electric-first company rather than a traditional automaker trying to adapt. What makes BYD particularly threatening to Tesla is that they've matched much of Tesla's technical capabilities while maintaining a significant cost advantage. When competing technologies offer comparable performance, similar range, similar charging speeds, similar safety features, price becomes the decisive factor for most buyers. But BYD's rise represents more than just a market share grab. They're reshaping the fundamental economics of the electric vehicle industry. By demonstrating that high-quality electric vehicles can be produced at lower price points, they're forcing every other manufacturer to rethink their cost structures and business models. The SIXT partnership sends a powerful signal, but what about individual consumers? How do everyday Europeans actually feel about Chinese cars? Recent surveys of over 2,000 European consumers reveal a complex and divided picture. Approximately 27% of Europeans say they could imagine purchasing a Chinese vehicle. That's more than 1 in 4 potential buyers, a significant market segment. However, 33% clearly stated they would not consider buying a Chinese car under any circumstances. Another 25% expressed strongly negative attitudes toward Chinese automotive brands. These numbers suggest significant resistance, but they also reveal an important demographic split. When researchers analyzed responses by age group, a striking pattern emerged. Among the youngest buyers, those aged 18 to 24, acceptance of Chinese brands was significantly higher. 38% of respondents in this age group indicated willingness to consider Chinese vehicles. This is the demographic that will drive automobile purchasing decisions for the next 4 to 5 decades. In contrast, among consumers over 55 years old, only 24% expressed openness to Chinese brands. This older demographic has spent their entire lives associating automotive quality with European, American, or Japanese manufacturers. Their brand loyalties were formed in an era when "made in China" meant cheap, low-quality products. What these statistics reveal is a generational shift in perception. Younger consumers don't carry the same prejudices or preconceptions about Chinese manufacturing. They've grown up in an era where Chinese companies produce smartphones, laptops, and consumer electronics that rival or even exceed Western alternatives in quality. They're comfortable with Chinese brands in a way their parents and grandparents simply aren't. For BYD and other Chinese automakers, this demographic trend is enormously encouraging. It suggests that resistance to Chinese vehicles isn't based primarily on objective quality assessments, but on legacy perceptions that are gradually eroding. As older consumers age out of the market and younger buyers take their place, acceptance of Chinese automotive brands will naturally increase. The SIXT BYD partnership carries particular symbolic weight because of where it's happening. Germany. Germany didn't just participate in the automotive revolution, they invented it. Carl Benz built the first practical automobile powered by an internal combustion engine in 1885. For more than a century, Germany has been synonymous with automotive engineering excellence. Brands like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche don't just sell cars. They sell a century of engineering heritage and precision manufacturing. For over 100 years, Germany has been recognized as Europe's automotive center and a bellwether for the global industry. When German automakers adopt new technologies or strategies, the rest of the world pays attention. That's what makes SIXT's decision so significant. As Germany's largest car rental company and Europe's biggest, SIXT bypassed every German automaker to partner with a Chinese manufacturer. They looked at vehicles from Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, companies headquartered mere hours away, and decided BYD offered superior value. This wasn't a decision made lightly or without understanding the political implications. SIXT knew they'd face criticism for not supporting domestic manufacturers. They knew the optics of choosing a Chinese partner during a trade dispute would be controversial. They did it anyway, because the business case was overwhelming. What this signals is that in the electric vehicle era, traditional assumptions about automotive leadership are being disrupted. BYD has demonstrated capabilities in electric vehicle technology and manufacturing efficiency that exceed some German manufacturers, at least in specific segments of the market. This doesn't mean German automakers are doomed. They still maintain advantages in luxury vehicles, engineering refinement, and brand prestige. But in the mass-market electric vehicle segment, where cost efficiency and battery technology matter most, Chinese manufacturers have established a competitive edge that even high tariffs can't eliminate. SIXT wasn't the only major mobility company to bet big on BYD. In July 2024, another massive partnership was announced, one that might be even more significant. Uber, the world's largest ride-hailing platform, revealed they would purchase 100,000 BYD vehicles to support drivers across Europe and South America. The announcement triggered intense discussion across social media and automotive industry forums. What made this partnership particularly noteworthy was the company doing the buying. Uber is an American company founded in San Francisco with deep ties to Silicon Valley and the American tech industry. Tesla is also an American company, and CEO Elon Musk has long cultivated close relationships with American tech leaders. Given those connections, many observers expected that if Uber made a major electric vehicle purchase, it would naturally be from Tesla. The two companies seemed like natural partners. Both American, both disruptors in their respective industries, both led by charismatic, media-savvy executives. Instead, Uber chose BYD. The decision sent a clear message about how the global automotive industry is being reshaped. National loyalty and tech industry connections matter less than fundamental business value. Uber conducted its analysis and concluded that BYD offered the best combination of vehicle quality, price, and partnership terms for their specific needs. According to Uber's public statements, they plan to invest $800 million by 2025 specifically to help drivers transition to electric vehicles. That's not marketing rhetoric. It's a massive financial commitment that reflects Uber's belief that electric vehicles are the future of ride-hailing. Uber has also set an even more ambitious long-term target, achieving zero-emission transportation in all cities across the United States, Canada, and Europe by 2030. That's less than 6 years away, a time frame that requires immediate, large-scale action rather than gradual experimentation. To meet that goal, Uber needs manufacturing partners who can deliver hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles annually at prices that work for ride-hailing economics. Traditional automakers have struggled to meet those requirements. Their electric vehicles, while technically impressive, often carry price premiums that make them impractical for ride-hailing drivers who need to maximize their earnings relative to vehicle costs. BYD, by contrast, has built their entire business model around affordable electric vehicles at scale. They're not trying to be the electric vehicle equivalent of Mercedes-Benz or BMW. They're trying to be the Toyota or Honda of electric vehicles, reliable, affordable, and available in massive quantities. For Uber's purposes, that's exactly what they need. The partnership suggests that going forward, Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers like BYD are likely to remain Uber's primary suppliers as they execute their electrification strategy globally. Step back from the specific details of vehicle purchases and tariffs for a moment, and you'll see this story is about something much bigger than just cars. What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in global industrial power. For over a century, the global automotive industry was dominated by manufacturers from Western Europe, the United States, and Japan. These companies didn't just build cars, they shaped cities, defined industrial policy, and represented national technological prowess. Automotive manufacturing was one of the clearest examples of Western and Japanese industrial superiority. It required sophisticated supply chains, advanced engineering capabilities, massive capital investments, and decades of accumulated expertise. These were barriers that seemed insurmountable for companies from developing economies. The electric vehicle revolution has disrupted those assumptions. Electric vehicles require fundamentally different manufacturing expertise, battery chemistry, power electronics, software integration, rather than internal combustion engine design and mechanical engineering. This technological transition created an opportunity for new entrants who weren't burdened by legacy factories, dealer networks, and organizational structures built around gasoline-powered vehicles. Chinese companies, especially BYD, seized that opportunity with remarkable speed and efficiency. They recognized that electric vehicles weren't just a different type of car, they were a different industry with different economics and different competitive advantages. By focusing relentlessly on battery technology, manufacturing scale, and cost efficiency, Chinese manufacturers have established positions in the electric vehicle industry that rival or exceed traditional automotive powers. And they've done it in roughly a decade, a time frame that seemed impossible when Tesla first proved electric vehicles could be commercially viable. The SIXT and Uber partnerships demonstrate that this shift is real and durable. These aren't Chinese companies selling to Chinese consumers in protected domestic markets. These are Chinese companies winning competitive contracts with major Western corporations who have access to vehicles from every manufacturer on Earth. When those Western companies conclude that Chinese vehicles offer the best value, even after accounting for substantial tariffs, it signals that the competitive dynamics of the automotive industry have fundamentally changed.